Hello and what's up, GSC Pokemon Challenges fam? How are you guys doing? We are back with episode 5 of the Chuck, Pryce, and Jasmine section of the Minimum Battles series. Just Minimum Battles, if you will. And so far, we've done pretty good. 21 Pokemon legitimately getting through. That does include the Pikachu that ended up struggling against Jasmine last time, but it got to struggle legitimately, so that's why we're going to allow it to be in the pass column. We also have 4 Pokemon that did have to go OP TMs. Nidoran and Nidorino did not have to use rare candies, however, whereas Pidgeot and Fearow did. And that's the reason why, even though they're all in the same category, things are starting to separate out just a little bit. Then in the fail column, Pidgeotto so far, just 2 Pokemon. Who knows? We could add more to that list as we go. But today, I actually think we're going to have pretty easy times getting through. We are going to be running a bunch of normal types, as well as Ninetales, but all of these Clefable lines and Wigglytuff line Pokemon get tons and tons of moves. We're talking about TMs, we're talking about nightmare strats, we're talking about sleep strats. I think they can get through without too much issue, and that includes the baby Pokemon. Ninetales, I have a lot of confidence just because of the fact that we have already seen other fire types progress here. Like if a Charmander is getting through at this point, I have to believe that Ninetales can find a way. That's just my opinion though. Tell me your predictions down below. But in order to just add a little bit of interest to this episode, we're going to do 2 of our member picks. We've got the Vulpix and the Growlith, but I'm also going to jump ahead to the next section just to scout with my personal Arcanine, because I want to see how that next section with Clair, rival number 4, and we're even going to go all the way up to rival number 5 in this one. How is it going to work? Can I get Arcanine all the way to the steps of the Pokemon League? That's what we're going to test in this one. Let's find out. But first things first, we're going to get into our normal types, starting off with Clefable, which finished the last section with Metronome, Rollout, Sing, and Moonlight. Now, I don't think Rollout is going to be enough in this section, but we get access to all of the elemental punches, and I think that is going to be enough to get us through this. Add on the fact that we can put our opponents to sleep, we should have some pretty decent chances. Still, I think the best play is to go to the Rocket Hideout first with all of these Pokemon just to gain some extra levels. We're in the fast level up group with the Clefable line and the Jigglypuff line, so that should help a lot in this section as far as getting more levels for the toughest opponents. Now, it's worth noting that the medium slow level up group is faster than the fast level up group until level 30, and that's where it actually flips over and the fast level up Pokemon are actually faster than medium slow level up Pokemon. And since we can see that just here in the Rocket Hideout, our Clefable has made it to level 30, that means that from here on out, this Pokemon should be getting more levels than what we were seeing with our medium slow level of Pokemon in the first episode. So it's going to be interesting to see just exactly what level we actually managed to get through with these fast level up Pokemon. I expect that we will be maybe 1 or 2 levels higher than we were with the medium slow level of Pokemon in the same section. And sure enough, Clefable gets to the end just fine. I had 1 reset just because I ran into a non-required trainer down here. Outside of that, you're getting through to the end just with rollout strats with no real issues. So let's just see how we do against the final Rocket Executive here, where I think the only strategy is just to spam rollout and hope that we hit. I accidentally went Metronome turn 1 though and got Aeroblast, so we did really good damage to Arbok, but it still took 2 rollouts after that to knock it out. It takes 2 shots to take down the Gloom, and now on Merkel, of course, rollout all the way built up is super effective. It's just going to be a 1-hit KO, so we get through nice and easy, and we can move on in the game. But now with that done, I think I'm going to go to Pryce first. We've got Rollout, which is super effective against at least the Dugong and neutrally effective against everything else. And the next 2 gyms theoretically are much harder. We're going to have to learn new moves, I think, because obviously Jasmine will resist Rollout with all of her Pokemon. Fire Punch is probably the play there. And we are weak against fighting type moves, so we're going to have to be really careful when we go into the Chuck gym. So let's just try Pryce first and see how this goes. So Pryce attempt number 1, I'm just going to go ahead and set up drop Sing first on the Seal, it still manages to land Icy Wind and lower our speed, but it doesn't really do a lot of damage. The real point here is that I wanted Seal asleep so that I could just have a few turns to build up my rollout. Dugong comes out next. It hits Aurora Beam, but it didn't do that much, and we one-shot that Pokemon. We get to level 33 as Piloswine comes out and gets one hit KO'd, so Clefable has no issues getting through Pryce. But now with that done, we are going to have to think about changing up our moveset. I don't think we forget Rollout. I think Metronome is the most likely move to go to give us something a little bit better to get through the next section. This is a spot where I think Fire Punch strats will be good enough to get through Jasmine, so we may just want to go to Jasmine first. She will give us a badge boost in defense, which could help a lot in Chuck's gym, given the fact that they're all going to be using physical moves against us. So this is one rare run where I don't think we try to take on the randos in Chuck's gym yet. I think we instead go first to just pick up the secret potion and then run back to take on Jasmine with the Fire Punch. And hopefully that will be enough to get us through. And with the badge boost in defense, then hopefully we can actually turn around and come back to beat Chucky Boy. So in this one, I'm honestly not going to waste any time. I'm just going to go ahead and learn Fire Punch because it's the obvious play. Rollout's not going to do much damage, and going for Metronome here is just going to be terrible. So let's go ahead and just add Fire Punch on in the place of Metronome and try our hand at Jasmine. So the question here is, do we one-shot these Magnemites with Fire Punch? And the answer is yes, at least on the first one we do. Second Magnemite also gets one hit KO'd. That brings out the Steelix. We're of course faster here, so I'm just going to Sing to put it to sleep. And now Fire Punch does well over half. She's either going to Hyper Potion or just go down the next turn. So Clefable gets through Jasmine super easy with the Fire Punch strat. And now with that done, we can go back to Chuck's gym. Now going back in with Sleep plus a neutrally effective move and Fire Punch, I think we get through the randos just fine, but I think we have to add on Thunder Punch in order to get through Chuck himself and his Poliwrath. Let's see how this goes. First up is the two Black Belt bros, and they could just completely wreck our Pokemon if they actually hit. We can see Double Kick did massive damage there. Fortunately, we get Hitmonlee to sleep after that. Let's just go for the Fire Punch. This is going to be a 3-hit KO, but it stays asleep, so we do get through on the first attempt. That will bring out the Hitmonchan, which fortunately does not know any fighting type moves. We'll still put it to sleep to be safe, but now Fire Punch should just get the job done. And yet again, after 3 hits, sure, it wakes up and Comet Punches, but that's nothing to write home about, and we get to level 35 right there. Still, we definitely can't get complacent against any of these trainers since they could pretty easily knock out our Clefable. So I think I'm going to spam Moonlight here and there in order to heal up, and then just hopefully knock the Pokemon out from there. And we get to level 36 as we make it to Chuck. So now I think the only play is to just throw on the move Thunder Punch here in the place of Fire Punch, and let's just see how this actually works out against Chuck himself. Now, the one thing that we have going for us is that we're already like 9 levels higher than the Primeape here. It goes Leer, but that shouldn't really matter as we simply knock it out. Poliwrath comes out next, and yet again, we're 6 levels higher at this point with no rare candies used, but it hits the Dynamic Punch doing massive damage. We hit ourselves in confusion once, hit ourselves again, and we get knocked out on the first attempt. We absolutely have to land Sleep here if we're going to get through this Pokemon. The next attempt, we get a Dynamic Punch miss and then get Poliwrath to sleep. Of course, he will use a healing item, but it doesn't matter. It's just a 2-hit KO there to knock him out with the Thunder Punch. So Chuck does go down. Clefable gets through this section without any real issues. It's kind of what I expected, to be perfectly honest. So now let's check in on Wigglytuff and see how it goes. And Wigglytuff is coming in with Rollout, Mudslap, Defense Curl, and Sing. Now, Mudslap could be the move to go because, yet again, we could just replace that with some Elemental Punches here. But for now, at least, Mudslap does give us a move to use against Jasmine's Pokemon that might be reasonable. It might not be a case that we absolutely have to replace our moves here. Still, I'll just stick to the same routing as we did with Clefable, and let's see how this actually works. And as we come to the last Rocket Executive here, Wigglytuff again had no issues getting through the Rocket hideout. So honestly, against Arbok, we can just set up a defense curl, go into rollout that's going to double our power. So we easily knock Arbok out in 2 hits. Gloom is a 1-hitter this time, and Murkrow, we missed the rollout, but when we hit it the next turn, even a brand new rollout just one-shots there, so we easily get through with no issues. So we're just going to stick to the plan, Pryce, then Jasmine, then Chuck. Let's just see if this works out. So it's time for our first attempt against Pryce. Let's see if we get through nice and easy. So in this one, I'm just going to actually set up Defense Curl and then go into my rollout. We get an Icy Wind turn 1 and then an Aurora Beam, but that doesn't really matter. We just 2-shot there against the first Seal. We outspeed and 1-shot the Dugong this time since we had no speed drop, and Piloswine never stood a chance. So Pryce once again goes down super easy on the first attempt. All kind of to be expected when you're using a fairly bulky Pokemon with Defense Curl rollout there though, so I'm not going to give Pryce too much shade for this one, though we may have to give him a little bit more disrespect when we get to some unevolved fire types later on. Somebody was commenting last time that they wish that Pryce was like manga Pryce, where apparently he had a Delibird that just went toe-to-toe with Ho-Oh and won. But granted, a lot of the Gen 2 gym leaders were much better, for example, in the anime and manga than they are in the actual game. Like Falkner is using like Dodrio and whatnot in the anime, if I recall correctly. So it would be actually kind of interesting to have a game where you went from Kanto to Johto and saw those teams that were actually in the anime. Just my opinion, however. Now, we did not come to the Lighthouse previously with Wigglytuff, so we are going to have to fight a couple battles in here in order to make our way up to Jasmine. Still, this is just a little bit of extra cannon fodder to get us back up to the level that we were at when we were running our Clefable, and none of these fights should be terribly difficult. So here we do, in fact, make it to Jasmine, and I'm just very interested to see if we can get through with our current moveset using the Defense Curl plus rollout strats, or are we going to be in a situation where this is really tough? I'm going to get into it once and just try this out, and I'm going to throw on a Paralyzed Cure Berry just in case, because I do plan to go for the Sing into Mudslap strats on the first 2 Magnemites. I think that's going to be the best way to go, but let's just see if it actually works. So the logic for going Sing first here is that I don't think we're going to one-shot against these Magnemites. Unfortunately, Sing is only 55% accurate, so that is kind of a problem, but we can just test here even though we're paralyzed to see, and we don't even get a chance because we were fully paralyzed and confused every single turn. Let's try this one again. This time we do land Sing on the first Magnemite. We can go Mudslap, and we see that this is a 2-hit KO. So it does make sense to go for the Sing here, knowing that we're going to need 2 hits after that. And as long as they stay asleep for 2 turns, we can in fact win. Getting us to level 34 as Steelix comes out. Now I'm going to Sing on Steelix. It went Screech against me, but once it's asleep, now I'm going to set up some defense curls here, and then I'm going to go into all the Mudslaps that I have available just to lower its accuracy as much as possible. That should help us avoid some Iron Tails while we put it back to sleep. And then I think the next play is to set up all the defense curls so that we have as much defense as possible. So even if it does hit an Iron Tail, it won't do nearly as much damage to us. And after getting our defense to +6, it only did 17 damage when it actually hit an Iron Tail. We'll just put it back to sleep, and now let's see what the rollout does. She has already used her Hyper Potion here, so while rollout is building up but not doing much damage, it should be a situation where every time rollout misses or finishes, we can just put her back to sleep and then go back into the rollout and slowly let it build up. And once it does build up, it is doing decent enough damage to get us through here. And if Iron Tail does lower our defense, we can simply set up another defense curl and then go back into the rollout. So even though rollout is resisted here, it's still perfectly fine to get through Jasmine. You've got 20 PP in that move, and with defense curl doubling your power in rollout, it is a legitimate strat to simply get through that gym using that move. And who knows, maybe it's enough for Chuck as well. I'm just going to go down and test this out, more just because I'm interested to see if we can get through without adding on the Thunder Punch here. If it doesn't work out though, obviously Thunder Punch strats are the play. We'll just test this a little bit to see. First up, we've got the back-to-back battles with the Black Belt Bros, so we'll simply put this first Hitmonlee to sleep, set up a defense curl here, and then let's just see what rollout does. It does pretty decent damage considering that it's a resisted move, so we knocked that one out in 3 hits. It's basically looking like the same range we were getting with the elemental punches before, so really not too bad with the defense curl rollout. And Hitmonchan really just can't do anything against us here, so I think we're going to be perfectly fine to knock this one out in 3 as well. Sure enough, we do, and we get to level 35 after beating those 2 trainers. So I think all of these randos at least are possible with this setup. They might not be perfectly consistent, but I don't see any reason why we actually need to learn any new moves. But while rollout did work for all of the rando trainers here, it remains to be seen if it's enough to actually get through Chucky Boy. The idea here is pretty simple. We set up the rollout on the first Primeape, get to the point where it's built up enough that it can just one-shot against the Poliwrath. Let's see if this is possible or not. So Chuck, attempt number 1, we're going to put this first Primeape to sleep, set up the defense curl, and now I'm just going straight into rollout. This looks like it's going to take 3 hits on the Primeape, knock it out. We even missed the second hit there, and sure enough, it's 3 hits to knock that one out, but now we've made it to Poliwrath. We hit the rollout. It does not quite get the one-hitter, but he goes Mind Reader. Oh, good job, Chuck. Once again, he completely punts on an easy victory, possibly. I don't know. But we have successfully defeated Chucky Boy. We can come talk to his wife and tell him, come on. You're saying he's a little chubby? Look at our Wigglytuff here. Arguably the wiggliest of Pokemon ever. Look at that jiggle. Come on. If we put Wigglytuff in the gym for a minute, that might actually turn it into a fighting type Pokemon. I'm not sure. But for now, Wigglytuff moves on. Let's get to our unevolved forms. So that brings us to Clefairy, which is running a pretty similar strat to what we were just seeing with the Wigglytuff. Difference is that we have Minimize on our moveset and we have no other damage dealing moves. Still, Minimize, Defense Curl, Sing, Rollout might be a completely OP strategy and might not require any adjustments whatsoever. So let's just get into this and find out. Just like its evolved form, Clefairy gets to the end of the rocket hideout with no issues whatsoever. And here, the main difference is just that our strat is more to set up a defense curl and then go into rollout, just because we're a little bit weaker than the Clefable was. It still turns out to be a 3-hitter on the Arbok. Bloom will go down in a single hit though, same for Murkrow as long as we actually hit the move. We can see that we were slower than Murkrow there though, and that is a little bit of an issue with Clefairy. It's not as fast as Clefable. That could affect things. I'm not sure it really will though, because in this section of the game, while the gym leaders have pretty strong Pokemon, they're generally pretty slow. We see that with Pryce and Chuck definitely, but Jasmine is the most notorious for this, and it's actually the reason why I think a lot more Pokemon are gonna get through Jasmine than some previous sections. It's because of the fact that she's slower. You can set up something like an accuracy reducing move like Mud Slap before she gets the chance to hit you. That's a really big contrast from what a lot of Pokemon were dealing with when they were failing on, for example, Rival 2 way back in the day. That was quite a while back on this series, but the Rival 2 fight often included an ace that was faster than your Pokemon, so you didn't have the ability to reliably set up accuracy drops before it got the chance to hit you with a really strong move. And that's why I think honestly Jasmine's gonna give a lot more chances to Pokemon, at least, to get some even kind of sus Pokemon through. Still, she's walled a couple so far, so we'll just have to see if it actually works out or not. For now though, we're going to come to Pryce with our Clefairy. I think this is an easy one. Let's just get into it. So of course he leads off with Seal, which is quite slow. It does hit Icy Wind and lower our speed though, which means that it's now faster than Clefairy. That was kind of bad. Now what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set up some Minimize in order to reduce its accuracy. I'm gonna try to put this Pokemon back to sleep, and I'm going hard on accuracy strats because we are going to be slower now than basically everything. I think this gives us a better chance of actually getting through on this one. Still, we know that Gen 2 accuracy strats are not as good as is what we saw in Gen 1. So I'm gonna just set up the Defense Curl rollout from here. It's gonna be a 3-hitter on the Seal, but even after he rests, he simply gets knocked out the next turn. Dugong misses Aurora Beam and gets destroyed. That brings out the Piloswine, it misses Blizzard, and we hit. So we get the first attempt victory thanks to the minimize strats. Obviously, if we had gotten hit by some strong moves there, we would have been done. But Clefairy has just enough to get through. I mean, it's basically the other Pokemon that was originally going to be a franchise mascot, you know, not just Pikachu. It was originally going to be Clefairy, legend has it. So it makes sense that this Pokemon also has an awful lot of plot armor, including the minimized strats in order to get through tough opponents. But with Pryce done, I think we're on our way down to Jasmine. We're going to try to repeat the same kind of strategy that we just used with Wigglytuff, because the only difference is that we only have to set up minimize once in the battle, whereas with the Mud Slaps, you had to use it on a bunch of different Pokemon. This might be a situation where we can just minimize enough times on the first Magnemite to actually enable us to get through there without any issues. And in that case, we would be feeling pretty good about getting through the rest of the team. So let's just see how this actually works out. So I'm just going to give the Paralyzed Cure Berry to Clefairy here, and let's just see if we can actually manage to get through with rollout strats. So Jasmine, attempt number 1, we're going for Sing, of course, on the first Magnemite, and now I'm going to set up all the minimize right here. It does manage to land a Thunder Wave on me, but we put it back to sleep after healing with the Paralyzed Cure Berry, and we just need to keep this Pokemon asleep. It lands a Thunderbolt this time after waking up, but we do get it back to sleep, and we're just going to keep setting up our minimize spam here. Now at +6 evasion, I will go into my Defense Curl, only to get paralyzed by a lucky Thunder Wave right there. Remember, there's a 25% chance for them to miss with their status moves on top of your own evasion and the move's normal accuracy in Gen 2, which is why it's actually kind of bad luck that we're getting hit here and knocked out on this one. Let's try this one again. So here, after getting set up, we're going for rollout. It didn't do that much with the first hit. It looks like it might take 3 or 4 hits to take this Magnemite down, assuming we can stop missing. Clearly the game thinks it has the minimize on, but we do get through that first Pokemon. Second Magnemite goes down in a single hit. We could learn Metronome via level up, but I'm actually going to skip the move. Let's just stick with our moveset as is, and we can see the fully powered up rollout did about 25% there. It did 30 damage, so this would be a 4-hit KO from that range. Still, we can now just go into the same strategy we had before. Let's Sing. Let's set up a ton of Defense Curls just to make it so that if it does land a lucky Iron Tail on us, it's not going to do very much damage. Fortunately, even when it wakes up, we're mostly going to dodge the Iron Tail here. And with our defense maxed out, we can go into the rollout, but once it hits the Iron Tail, we get wrecked. So it's pretty clear that rollout strats are not really going to be the way to go here. So I think we need to change up our moveset. So I think it's time to go to Fire Punch, and I'm going to put Fire Punch on over Defense Curl. I want to keep rollout since we learned that via TM, and I think minimize strats might be too important even in the next section, so I'm going to go with this. Defense Curl obviously is a TM. We can get it after we defeat Clair. It's not available until you can use Waterfall outside of battle, but still, I think this is going to be fine. I think we can get through the next section without it, so let's just see how this goes. So now the question becomes, does the Fire Punch one-shot here on the Magnemite? And the answer, at least with a critical hit, is yes. And sure enough, the next one also one-shots, so we level up again. We could learn Metronome, but I will skip that for now. Steelix comes out, and here I think we just go Sing. We don't even worry about the minimize, and it looks like it's going to be a 2-hit KO. Sure enough, it is, and we take Jasmine down on the first attempt with the Fire Punch. It was just barely a 2-hit KO there though, so it probably means that an unevolved form would not get through even if it had Fire Punch. And I forget if the babies learn the punch moves or not. I think they might not learn Fire Punch. They might be stuck using Fire Blast, if anything. anything, and that would put them in the unreasonable TMs category, or maybe they don't even learn that. I'm gonna have to double check their movesets and see, but for now, we're ready to go into Chuck's gym with our Clefairy. I think here we just need to sing on these Hitmons. If we don't land the sing, we simply go down nice and easy to Hitmonlee here. And the issue here is that Hitmonlee is faster than our Clefairy, so it seems like the best strategy is to give the Quick Claw here so that we at least have the chance to outspeed and land Sing. That's probably our best shot of actually getting through this first Pokemon. Still, if we get it to sleep on the first turn, we can go into the Fire Punch, which looks like a 4-hit KO here. Sure enough, it is, and it wakes up and knocks us out. So just landing Sing is not necessarily going to be enough to win here. So I think we even should go for Minimize here to reduce the accuracy of Hitmonlee's moves when it wakes up, because it probably will wake up. We get a nice critical hit and he misses a jump kick. That allows us to finally get through, but now we also have to get through the Hitmonchan. Comet Punch, of course, isn't nearly as scary though, so we can simply put this Pokemon to sleep and go into our Fire Punch. Should still be a 4-hit KO, but at least we're not at as much of a risk of actually getting knocked out here. And since those two Pokemon are the only ones that have really good special in this gym, I think we're basically good to go from here. The Thunder Punch is going to be the way to go on Chuck himself though. So I'm simply going to slap that on over Fire Punch, and let's see how we do against the gym leader after we get through these last two randos. So the biggest risk that we have here going into this fight is I think the Primeape is going to be faster than us. I'm not sure if we're faster than Poliwrath or not, so let's get into this and find out if it works with our Clefairy. First attempt here against the Primeape, of course it is faster than us. I get the Quick Claw to set up one Minimize right off the bat, and then I get a second Quick Claw that allows me to put Primeape to sleep. That was insanely lucky. Now I'm going to Thunder Punch here, and with a crit it will be a 2-hit KO, probably a 3-hitter normally. That brings out the Poliwrath, which is 1 point in speed slower than me. So I managed to hit the first Thunder Punch, and because we've used Minimize, I mean, it's highly unlikely he hits the Dynamic Punch, and we just two-shot there with Thunder Punch against Chuck, meaning Clefairy does in fact get through Chuck on the first attempt. So really it was the Black Belt bros that were hard here. Everything else really wasn't too bad for our Clefairy to get through. Still, we can see some signs that this might be tough when we get to the babies later on, so we'll just have to see. But for now, let's move on to Jigglypuff and see if it can repeat this same success. And Jigglypuff was running Rollout, Defense Curl, Sing, and Rest. Actually a kind of interesting strat given that Rest will allow us to heal up in battle, but we might forget Rest to learn a better move. Remember, Rest is available just in the Ice Path, so it's already a TM that's going to be pretty easy to get our hands on as we progress here. So we might just be in a situation where it's the most logical move to get rid of. We can get that as soon as we get through this section. You just can't go to the Icicle Path until you get to the Goldenrod Rocket storyline. This guy right here is blocking the path. Still, this should be enough to get us through the Rocket Hideout, so let's just go for this strat here. And sure enough, we make it to the end of this section with no major issues, so we can just heal up, and it's time to take on the final Rocket Executive. Here in this fight, I think the logical strategy is to go for the Defense Curl, followed by the Rollout. Don't think we need to do any additional setup, given that Rollout should just do pretty decent damage. We get poisoned though, and that puts us on a timer, and when that happens, I think the best play is to put the Arbok to sleep, so we actually lose the first attempt due to a flinch there. If we had managed to get to sleep though, we could have just rested to heal up our HP, but with that in mind, I'm now going to go Sing in this second attempt here just to keep this Arbok from building up too much damage or flinching us. The speed is the real issue for this Jigglypuff. I'm pretty sure it's even slower than the Clefable, so while we are going to one-shot everything after the Arbok with Rollout, we are going to also have some troubles, I think, in these upcoming gyms of maybe not being fast enough to outspeed even, say, that Poliwrath, that could really change the outcome. Still, we'll go into Pryce's gym first with our rollout strats and just see if we can manage to get through. Since his Pokemon are fairly slow, we will outspeed at least the first seal here, and maybe after that it doesn't matter as long as we build up enough rollout. So Pryce attempt number 1, let's go ahead and go for Sing on Seal. We miss. It goes for Icy Wind but does not get a speed drop, so that's perfectly fine by me. We will set up the defense curl and rollout. We missed the first rollout, but we hit the second and third. That brings out Dugong, which hits Aurora Beam and does massive damage with a crit, but we do one-shot there. We get to level 33 as Piloswine comes out. It hits Blizzard and we lose. So the fact that we're slower than Piloswine is a major issue in this one. Still, I think this one is possible with the right kind of luck, so let's just get back into it, especially because we got that critical hit in the first one. This time it takes 3 hits to knock out Seal, but Dugong does not get a crit. However, we missed the rollout here, so that means it gets to set up 2 more Aurora Beams on us, and we're back to Piloswine and it hits the Blizzard. I think if we can manage to get through without missing there against the Dugong though, we might still have a chance to actually win this one. Third time's the charm perhaps. We do one-shot there against the Dugong, get to level 33 as Piloswine comes out, and it goes Fury Attack this time, and that allows us to win. The fact that he went Fury Attack tells me that Blizzard probably wasn't going to one-hit KO us there, but that is a much closer looking fight than what we had with Clefairy, and that makes me pretty nervous going into these next 2 gyms. Fire Punch is probably going to be required for Jasmine from the looks of things, and Thunder Punch definitely is going to come in on Chuck. And honestly, I just don't see a situation where we're going to reliably be able to heal up with rest unless we get like a ridiculously long sleep on the opponent ourselves. Outside of that, we're always going to be in kind of a tough spot here. Still, we need to at least test this out, so let's just see if we can get it to go against these next 2 gym leaders. So let's at least try Jasmine once without going for the Fire Punch, though I think this is probably not going to work out. Let's just see. Now, the one main point here is that we can rest to heal damage as well as status. So assuming that we can get through this first Magnemite and just set up all of our defense curls here, it may be a situation where we can actually manage to get through. Unfortunately, Thunderbolt is doing massive damage here though, so if it just hits a couple Thunderbolts, it looks like we're going to lose. So after a few attempts, I think it's pretty clear. We just need to change strategies and go for that Fire Punch. And like I said, I'm going to learn it over rest here. I think it's the best play. I think defense curl rollout gives us better strategies in the next section than rest will, just because, yeah, we got a lot of HP, but we're really fragile. So now let's just see if we one-shot with the Fire Punch on this Magnemite. We do not. It's a 2-hit KO. That might have been a bad damage roll though, so I'm still going to go for it on the second Magnemite, but once again, we don't get the KO. It does miss the Thunder Wave though, so we managed to get through to the Steelix with no status on at least, and now we could learn Body Slam via level up. I'm actually thinking this could be a legit strategy against some Pokemon in the next section, but Defense Curl rollout might still be better. The reason that I wouldn't want to use Body Slam is because its high chance to paralyze the opponent could actually work against us by stopping us from putting them to sleep, but not learning this move could be a massive mistake. I'm honestly not sure. I'm going to skip it for now though. Let's see if this actually comes back to haunt me somewhere. For now though, we do make it to Steelix. Iron Tail does massive damage when it hits, but I do manage to get it to sleep the next turn. Fire Punch looks to be a 3-hit KO here. And of course, she's going to Hyper Potion, so it's actually going to take 5 hits to knock this Pokemon out. Still, she cannot wake up on the turn that she uses the Hyper Potion, so we do manage to take that Pokemon down. Still not super pretty to get through this section, and we're going to have to see how it goes after this as we get down to Chuck's gym. The one logic I could see for having learned Body Slam is that it would get much better ranges against the 2 Hitmons in this next gym, since they do have lower defense than special in Gen 2, but it might not matter. We might be able to get through just fine with an elemental punch here, so let's see how this actually works out. Now first up, we've got the Hitmonlee. Once again, it's faster than our Jigglypuff, so we easily get knocked out by that Pokemon. We're going to need to go Quick Claw strats here to have a really good chance of getting through. It took tons of attempts just to land a single Sing on this Hitmonlee, and of course it's a 4-hit KO after that. We do manage to knock it out on this attempt, but 7 attempts against Black Belt Yoshi to get through, and we still have to get through this second of the Black Belt Bros, and this is not guaranteed to be easy. Fortunately, we get Thunder Punch from Hitmonchan, which will give us at least a chance to put it to sleep and damage it, but it's another 4-hitter. It wakes up and goes Comet Punch, and we lose. The next attempt, we do get the Quick Claw activation and hit Sing, only for Hitmonlee to immediately wake up and knock us out in 2 turns. And we may be in a situation when we get here with Igglybuff that it's simply too weak, and anything less than a Quick Claw plus Sing landing is not enough to actually get through the first Hitmonlee. And then against this Hitmonchan, it's always going to be really random depending on whether it goes for an elemental punch or it goes for that Comet Punch. It's more likely to go for elemental punches here just because it is attacking randomly as far as I can tell. So eventually we do manage to get through, but man oh man, that took a ton of attempts to just be able to beat the first 2 trainers here. That makes me a little bit nervous going forward. Fortunately, the next couple trainers don't have Pokemon that are that fast and strong, so we should have a chance to get through to Chuck, but I'm a little nervous getting into this final battle. But we do actually run into a wall on the last trainer before Chuck. It took me 5 attempts to get through Black Belt Lung here. It's because of the fact that all of his Pokemon are faster than our Jigglypuff. So even if you try to put them to sleep and start setting up Defense Curl, critical hits from Karate Chop or getting flinched by Low Kick is enough to allow them to pretty easily stonewall this Pokemon. So I'm really nervous now about Chuck. Let's see how this actually goes. So Chuck attempt number 1, I think we have to Sing on the Primeape. It lands Leer and then goes for the Karate Chop, which is really not what I want to see. I'm going to set up a couple of defense curls here just to be safe, and then let's see what Thunder Punch does, and we basically just lose the first attempt. So let's get into this and try again. Next attempt, we're once again on low HP, but I think it's going to take multiple hits to knock out this Primeape, and sure enough, it looks like a 3-hitter here, and Karate Chop does a lot of damage. So as we get to Poliwrath, it just lands Dynamic Punch and we lose. We don't have accuracy or evasion strats here, so this is also looking pretty suspect. We get a nice Quick Claw activation after that does allow us to set up a defense curl and get the Primeape to sleep. It wakes up and goes for Fury Swipes, but once I get it back to sleep, I'm just going to go for the Thunder Punch. We get the 3-hit KO. Let's see how we do on Poliwrath. We get the Quick Claw turn 1 and do about half and paralyze it, but it just lands the Dynamic Punch and we lose. We needed it to be fully paralyzed there, or to get a critical hit, or for that Dynamic Punch to miss a couple times, which is about a 1 in 4 chance. This time we get through Primeape on full HP though. We get Mind Reader from the Poliwrath. Of course he's going to full heal after that, but I don't really care. But it's not a 2-hitter against the Poliwrath. He hits Dynamic Punch and we barely hold on, but he just knocks us out the next turn. That was terrible. The fact that we had him all the way down and we could not knock him out is why Jigglypuff is really not looking great now. And after a Leer from Primeape, that will just guarantee that any hit from the Dynamic Punch will be a 1-hit KO. He misses the first Dynamic Punch here. We know he's going to full heal, so I'm going to put him to sleep again. I thought he had 2 full heals, but it seems like maybe he only has 1. So I can hit the Thunder Punches after that, and we finally managed to win. But that took 5 attempts on Chuck. Definitely not consistent to get through there. Ultimately possible, but not pretty. And that makes me really, really worried for the Igglybuff, because I'm pretty sure that if any of these trainers have a guaranteed 1-hit KO, they will simply go for it. And if we have to land like a Quick Claw and a Sleep and keep them asleep for multiple turns, it could actually turn out to be a situation where this does not work out and Chuck actually defeats a Pokemon in the Minimum Battle series. We're just gonna have to see. For now, Jigglypuff does progress. Let's step down to Cleffa and Igglybuff. So Cleffa is coming with Nightmare, Hidden Power Dark, Rollout, and Sing. Now, of course, the issue for this Pokemon is that it does not learn Elemental Punches. So if we wanted to go for a Fire-type move, for example, we would have to learn Fire Blast. So I think we're basically stuck with the Nightmare strats as our main way of getting through this section. That could really affect things because, of course, Jasmine uses Hyper Potions and Chuck uses a full heal on his Poliwrath. So this might turn out to be really luck-based. And we might need to add on even a different move than that Hidden Power Dark in order to progress. Still, I think going to the Rocket Hideout first and then Pryce second is still going to be the best play with this Pokemon, so let's just see how it actually works out. And here it turns out that Cleffa is not consistent against really any of these rockets down here. It needs quite a bit of luck to actually get through. I'm already going Quick Claw strats because we're just so frail and slow, and even something like this Raticate after a couple rollouts is still a 2-hit KO. We do knock out the Coughing this time, but it took a few resets just on that Executive. We're gonna have to run out and heal before we can even take on the last trainer here. And the Scientist Jed with 3 Magnemites was actually a nightmare in this one, just because you basically have to keep him asleep to build up enough rollout to knock those Pokemon out. Like I said, the only real good move against Steel types that we could get here is gonna be that Fire Blast. So it's really not looking great. Still, Cleffa has made it here to the end of this section, so we can come fight the final Executive. Let's just see how this fight goes. First up, of course, we've got the Arbok. I'm worried about the Bite strats, which is why I'm putting this one to sleep. Now I am going to set up Rollout, hoping that we can build up enough to knock this Pokemon out and hopefully get the next couple Pokemon in good KO ranges. We get Poisoned here and then Wrapped, which is not ideal, and it's looking like it's going to take at least one more hit from Rollout here, and we miss. So that's pretty much it for our first attempt against this Executive. Let's see if we can get better luck though, not missing like 3 rollouts against the first Pokemon, and maybe we have a shot. Next attempt, Quick Claw activates first. We put Arbok to sleep, but it immediately woke up and Bite flinched us. Then it went for Wrap, but now we can finally go back into trying to set up Rollout, and it looks like a 4-hitter on this Arbok to get through. We managed to knock it out this time though. That will bring out the Gloom. We have a fully powered up Rollout to knock that one out. Now Murkrow goes Peck. I'm going for Rollout, and we do manage to get the KO, but it wasn't looking pretty there. Cleffa is hanging on by a thread at this point. Now I still think the best play is to go into Pryce's gym and try to take him on, since I don't imagine the other 2 gym leaders are going to be very easy here. We may need Nightmare strats, but I'm going to try to go with the Rollout first. So Pryce attempt number 1. We are slower than Seal and it headbutts and flinches us, but we get the Quick Claw the next turn, and that should allow us to start setting up the Rollout. We can see it's doing very little damage here against Seal though. It's a 3-hitter to knock that one out. We get Headbutt and flinched by the Dugong, and that's basically the end of this one. Next attempt, we take multiple Headbutt flinches from the first Seal, and then we miss a Rollout, which allows it to rest. Fortunately, with it resting, that should give us a few turns to set up the Rollout, but we just keep missing, so we lose. I'm pretty sure if we miss even one Rollout here, unless the Seal is asleep, we simply have to reset at that point. The problem is we don't really have any better situations here. In fact, it takes all of our Rollouts just to knock out the Seal after it goes for rest. That brings us to Dugong, which is weak against Rollout at least, so the move should set up a little bit better here, and we did manage to get it to sleep, and we get another Quick Claw right there to knock it out as we get to level 33. Piloswine hits the Blizzard and gets a critical hit though, so we lose on that attempt. The whole problem here though is that we can't really go to Chuck or Jasmine with this Pokemon because they're just going to be even tougher to actually get through. So I think the only way to progress is to get the luck to actually knock out Pryce's Pokemon with the Rollout strats, which is really hard to do when you're just slower than his entire team. So this time we do get back to Piloswine, and we even get it to sleep with Sing. I'm going to go for the Nightmare strat and then try to start setting up Rollout. It immediately wakes up though and knocks me out. So we can basically see about 10 resets into this one that this one's just not working. At least not without crazy luck and not getting flinched and all of that. Cleffa is not beating Pryce, at least not without crazy luck of not getting flinched and getting the Quick Claw to activate all the time. That fight just simply is not working. So what can we do instead? Well, it might be that Jasmine's Pokemon are slower and we can actually outspeed there, and then maybe Nightmare strats can work. So I'm gonna go test that out one time. I honestly don't see a situation where we're going to be able to beat anything in Chuck's gym at this point. Still, what the heck, I'll try one time just going into the gym just to see these rando trainers for a minute, just because I kind of want to see maybe if there's only one Pokemon in front of us, we get a Quick Claw with Sing, and then we land the Nightmare. Maybe we can find a way through. Let's just see. So here we get the Quick Claw, but we miss, and Jump Kick just one-shots us from the Hitmonlee. Now, Jump Kick is only 95% accurate, so there is a chance for it to miss. And on the next attempt, we do manage to land the Sing and get the Nightmare. And with that, I'm going to go into Rollout, hoping to just build up a little bit of chip damage while it's still asleep. But when it wakes up, the Jump Kick is a guaranteed one-hit KO on us from the looks of things. And because he has that guaranteed one-hit KO, he's never going to do anything else. Just Jump Kick and one-shot us over and over and over again, and we're just gonna have to reset for this thing to actually land turn 1 with the Quick Claw activation. It's pretty close to the luck of getting a critical hit, which is why technically we could reset for it, but it's still not pretty. A few attempts later, we do manage to get him asleep again though, and get the Nightmare set up. We're hitting the Rollout as well, so we do manage to get through. It said like 22 resets there, but that's also including the times that I was going up against Pryce, I think. I don't think the reset counter resets until I actually win a fight, so just take that for what you will. But now we have to beat the second black belt in a row, where yet again we have to actually land Sing here to have a shot. We do like the elemental punches though, because they give us a better chance of actually surviving multiple turns. But the second we actually manage to land the Nightmare on the Hitmonchan, it just wakes up and knocks us out in a couple more turns. So we can see that this back-to-back battle is not looking good, and we're probably not going to be able to win that. So let's go and try our hand at Jasmine instead. The only logic for going up against Jasmine is that we might be able to outspeed here, and in the worst case we could add on Fire Blast over the place of Hidden Power Dark. Yes, that puts us in unreasonable TMs categories, but it would be a super effective move against Jasmine and against that Piloswine on Pryce's team, so it could give us a chance of actually progressing. And it is possible that if we went through all the caves at this point and gathered all the items that we possibly could to sell for money, we might be able to get pretty close to affording Fire Blast. So I don't think it's completely unreasonable, but I'm still going to try Jasmine without it first. And it turns out that in this fight, we're even slower than the Magnemites. We get a nice Quick Claw turn 1, and so we do manage the Nightmare on the first Magnemite, which will allow us to knock that Pokemon out. That brings out the second Magnemite, which misses Thunder Wave, so also very nice. We can go Nightmare yet again. I'm just going to spam some Hidden Power here in order to try to whittle this one down. We get confused when it wakes up, but we get another Quick Claw, allowing us to put this Pokemon back to sleep. Though we are confused here, we do get the Nightmare. It stays asleep at least for one more turn. That will allow us to get the Steelix on the first attempt. And finally against Steelix, we're actually faster, but it hits the Iron Tail and knocks us out. So it's pretty clear that we're gonna have to get through these first two Magnemites. But then once we get to Steelix, we have a shot here. Next attempt, we get paralyzed by the Thunder Wave though, and that may be all she wrote for this one. In fact, I'm going to replace the Quick Claw with the Paralyzed Cure Berry. There's a 25% chance for the Thunder Wave to miss, but I don't think we can really bank on that. And the Quick Claw activations that many times are just kind of unreasonable. We can also see that we're being 2-hit KO'd by Thunderbolt. So I think the second that one Magnemite goes Thunderbolt on us, that's basically the end of the run. So I'm pretty sure she just goes Thunderbolt if she's going to KO us. So we do manage to get back to Steelix, but we are paralyzed in this one. It misses the first Iron Tail, hits the second one, and a critical hit just knocks us out. We don't even get to see if it's a range or not, or if it's just a guaranteed one-hitter. But again, this is not looking good. I think the only play that we can go for now is the Fire Blast, just because it will give us a super effective move here. And while Fire Blast isn't like perfectly accurate by any means, it's much more accurate than going for the Sing strategy. So I think it's going to get us through those first two Magnemites more consistently. And in that case, I do think we go back to the Quick Claw, hoping that we can get the Quick Claw activations or the miss from the Thunder Wave in order to get to that Steelix still on full health. Let's see how this goes. So when the Quick Claw activates and we hit Fire Blast, of course it one-shots against the first Magnemite. Second Magnemite goes super sonic on us, and then we hit ourselves in confusion and we simply lose that first attempt with the Fire Blast on. But let's keep trying this a couple more times. This time we get a supersonic miss from the first Magnemite, so we knock it out immediately after that. Then we get Thunderbolt from the second Magnemite. Yes, we took a lot of damage, but that means we go to Steelix faster than this Pokemon. Unfortunately, we still lose because we missed the Sing. At that point, I do think we have to Sing on the Steelix in order to win. Now, it does look like with a couple of low rolls on Thunderbolt, we can actually survive, but we managed to get through yet again to the Steelix on about half health. We land Sing this time. I'm still going to Nightmare because I think that it's highly likely that Fire Blast is not a one-hitter. It is not, but one Fire Blast plus 2 Nightmares is enough to actually get through Jasmine there. It's not pretty, it takes a lot of luck, but we did get it to go. So now the question is, Chuck or Pryce? I'm going to go back to Chuck's gym just to try it because of the fact that we could get access to Fly, and that would help us get back to Pryce faster. I'm not sure it really matters though. We're probably in bad shape either way, but it's worth at least testing it out. Maybe Fire Blast just does enough damage to the Hitmons that they're actually in a reasonable KO range here. We actually survive against Jump Kick from Hitmonlee now, but we can see that it looks like Fire Blast is a 3-hit KO. Still, we managed to get some misses, so we do get through the first Pokemon. I'm not too confident here on the Hitmonchan though. Sure enough, it just immediately knocks me out. The reason that I think I want to take this gym on though is because we're in a situation right now where we would only be in a speed tie with Pryce's Seal, so I think we need a little bit more damage output and a little more speed before we can actually get there. Still, we are getting through the Hitmonlee much more consistently now, so we may just need a Quick Claw activation on the Hitmonchan, or of course if we get the luck to get the turn 1 Quick Claw here on this Hitmonlee, then it's just a matter of actually landing some hits. So we get through on full health this time as we go to the Hitmonchan. It goes Thunder Punch, which is not going to do that much. We can Nightmare here and now go into the Fire Blast. So we have 3 PP remaining. It hits a Fire Punch when it wakes up, but we actually managed to get through now as we get to level 34. And with that, I think we can at least try to get through the remaining randos in the gym, given the fact that Fire Blast is a special move, should do decent damage. It's only the 2 Hitmons that have decent special defense here. We're even faster than Machop on the next trainer, though I misclick, but we can see we're doing a lot more damage at this point. Sure enough, we can get through those remaining trainers. They take like a reset each, but the job does get done, and that has gained us a couple levels before we try to go back to Pryce. But first, I'm just going to take one shot at Chuck. He only has 2 Pokemon. I still don't think we outspeed anything here, but maybe, just maybe with the Quick Claw, we can get the right activations to put his Pokemon to sleep, use some Nightmare strats, and maybe some Rollout strats in order to get through this. Let's just find out. So first up, the Primeape goes for Leer, then Fury Swipes. Obviously, that's going to do a lot of damage, and we're just going down if we can't land any Sings. Still, the Leer might not really be that relevant, because if he does hit us with Dynamic Punch, I'm pretty sure it's just a 1-hit KO no matter what we do. The sleep here is more about being able to knock out the Primeape. Now on Poliwrath, we're hoping for the Dynamic Punch miss, which we get. We put it to sleep here, and I have to remember the fact that he will use a full heal here, but he misses a couple more dynamic punches, which is very good, so we knock that Pokemon out. I'm gonna go Fire Blast even though it's resisted, just because I'm trying to deal a little bit of chip damage, maybe take off one turn, and sure enough, we managed to get through Chuck on the second attempt. So Chuck is definitely not perfect, especially because his best move is a 50-50 shot to hit or miss. That allows even a Pokemon as weak as Cleffa to get through there. And it turns out that the Black Belt bros at the start of the gym were significantly harder than Chuck himself, and they were finally possible once we went to the Fire Blast strat. But with that, we have nothing left to do but to take on Pryce. And yes, we're up at a ton of resets already, 44 resets in this episode, but we have leveled up significantly since last time we were here. We will actually outspeed against the first Pokemon, so maybe that's all we need. If we just outspeed and take no damage there, get the right ranges against the Dugong, and then maybe Fire Blast against that Piloswine, we might be able to get this to go. Let's see. So Pryce attempt number 1, now at level 35. We miss, and then he hits the Icy Wind to get the speed drop. I think we just immediately reset there because we know he's going to go into Headbutt and start just flinching us over and over at that point. So turn 1 Sing I think is required. Then we can go into the rollout. We're hoping not to miss too many times. Here we do still take 4 hits to knock out that Seal though. We get the Quick Claw on Dugong, which does allow us to one-shot that Pokemon. Now Piloswine goes missed, so it clearly was not going to one-hit us. Let's see what Fire Blast does here. It does well over half. He Hyper Potions. I'm gonna just take the opportunity to put a Nightmare on him. Then unfortunately he wakes up and goes Fury Attack, then Blizzard to knock us out. Still, if we get there with decent enough health, it looks like we can in fact win this fight. So once again back to the Dugong. Once again a Quick Claw activation on Dugong. So we're 2 Piloswine on full health. It goes for the Fury Attack. We're going to Nightmare here just to get a little more chip damage, and then go for the Fire Blast. And we do manage to get through on this attempt. 1 Nightmare plus 1 Fire Blast got the job done. So Pryce, once you come back at a higher level with Fire Blast on the moveset, is not bad. He's not great, but he's not terrible. Fire Blast is required here though. So Cleffa is in that OPTMs category. I mean, it already would have been there with the Hidden Power Dark, so I think this is perfectly reasonable, but it does progress through this section. Now it's time to check in on Igglybuff, which I believe is even slower than this, and it might just be done, because if it can't manage to outspeed anything, including that Steelix, we might just not have a chance to actually progress. Let's see. So with Igglybuff, we are coming with Rollout, Thunder, Fire Blast, and Sing. It had to go all in on the super strong TMs in the last section. Obviously, Thunder could help us when we get to that Poliwrath, as well as against the first couple Pokemon on Pryce's team. So I'm hopeful that that will be the case, that using the Thunder will help us in those fights. Fire Blast will then help us against Jasmine and against the Piloswine. So who knows, maybe with this moveset, we're actually better against Pryce and are able to get through that gym more efficiently than trying to go rollout strats. I'm not super confident in this Pokemon though, because our speed is just so incredibly low. We won't know until we test it out though, so let's just see. So just like Cleffa, we are struggling on this Rocket Executive in the bottom level of the Rocket Hideout. I think the only effective strategy here is to go for the Quick Claw strats. It's especially this Raticate with its Hyper Fangs that's completely destroying us. I'm gonna try to set up rollout though, so that I hopefully can one-shot here against the final Coughing, and we do manage to get through on this attempt, but it's not looking pretty. Still, we have made it to the end of this section. We can run out and fight against the last Executive. Let's see if this actually works or not though. Of course, she leads off with the Arbok, and yet again I think Sing strats are required here. And then we're going into the rollouts hoping to just build up enough that we can knock everything else out. We miss one one of our rollouts, but we do manage to knock that Pokemon out, only to then miss rollout here on the Gloom. I'll switch into Fire Blast, which does get the one-hitter there though, and we can switch into Thunder on the final Murkrow, which once it does hit is a one-hit KO as well. So Igglybuff does manage to get through this section, and we are going to go to Pryce first, given our moveset. We technically have one super effective move for every Pokemon, so I think it's the best way to go. So attempt number 1 against Pryce with Igglybuff. We're of course slower than everything here, but I'm gonna try to Sing on Seal. I'm still gonna try to go for the rollout strat once just to see, because as long as we're able to build up completely and hit against the Dugong, we may just be able to one-hit KO that Pokemon. Sure enough, we do. Now the question is, how do we do on Piloswine? It misses the first and second Blizzard here, so we put it to sleep. We go Fire Blast, and it does over half, so this is just a 2-hit KO. Igglybuff beats Pryce on the first attempt. That also should power up our special moves, which will help a little bit as we go through this. Though we're not super fast, we're still going to be outsped by the 2 Magnemites on Jasmine's team. We should outspeed the Steelix though, and that should give us a small advantage as we go into that. We may just need a Paralyzed Cure Berry and or some Quick Claw luck in order to actually get through to the Steelix, and then it's just a matter of sleep plus Fire Blast strats. Still, we have to go to Cyanwood first, so I'm gonna at least just test it out to see how we do against the Black Belt Bros, because maybe we're able to just get the ranges because we're using these stronger moves to get through, and more levels is always going to be better, especially if we can gain 2 more levels before we go to Jasmine. We might be able to outspeed or speed tie those Magnemites. I'm honestly not sure, but let's just see. Now, we actually survive against Jump Kick from Hitmonlee just because Igglybuff has so much HP. The problem is that after that, our moves aren't super accurate, so we're gonna need a little bit of luck here. And it seems that surviving against Jump Kick is a range. If he gets a low damage roll, we can survive, otherwise we get KO'd. This time we get the Quick Claw to activate though. We can hit Thunder or Fire Blast. Both are going to be the same effective power. They are 3-hit KOs here. He wakes up and simply knocks me out. Now, defeating Jasmine will give us a badge boost in defense, which may make it possible to actually get through there. So I'm gonna go back up and try her now with our Fire Blast just to see if it can work out. Now, it's also worth noting we're not rocking Nightmare here, so we don't have Nightmare as a strat to get through that Steelix, and that could be our bigger problem, is that we're gonna have to use a different move on the Magnemites, or we're going to have to hope to keep the Steelix asleep long enough to actually knock it out with rollout. Let's see how this actually works. So of course the Magnemites can just 2-shot us here with Thunderbolt still, but we're really hoping for like a Quick Claw activation or to not get hit by the Thunder Wave, which is a 25% chance. We do manage to get through to the Steelix on the second attempt, but that is after getting paralyzed. Iron Tail here one-shots us with a critical hit. I'm not sure if the crit even matters though. We're probably getting knocked out either way. Still, we get back to Steelix on the next attempt, and we actually survive against the Iron Tail. We now have 3 Fire Blasts remaining as it goes to sleep. Unfortunately, we couldn't land any of them because we were fully paralyzed. So I think we have to reset here if we even miss 1 Fire Blast on these Magnemites, because I'm pretty sure we need all of the Fire Blasts in order to win here. So this time we actually managed to get to the Steelix without being paralyzed. We get hit by the Iron Tail turn 1, and we just couldn't land either of our Sings there. We just need to land Sing, and then maybe we have a shot. A couple attempts later, we're back to Steelix, though we did get 1 Thunderbolt from one of the Magnemites. Still, we did manage to knock them out. We get Fire Blast on Steelix, which does over half, and she doesn't Hyper Potion, so we actually win there. It took quite a few attempts there, but it's really just about getting through the first 2 Magnemites and then actually landing Sing on that Steelix. The Magnemites are not guaranteed to go for Thunder Wave. They can go for Thunderbolt, they can go for Supersonic, which is only 55% accurate, and Thunder Wave has a 25% chance to miss. It might be that that's a situation where you're better off going with the Paralyzed Cure Berry and just hoping for them to use otherwise the wrong moves, but ultimately it did work. We did manage to get through, and now our defense is buffed a little bit, and that should, in theory, help us to survive against this Hitmonlee. Let's see if we can now actually beat the Black Belt Bros. He actually goes double kick here, which tells me that jump kick is no longer a guaranteed one-hit KO. So now we just need to actually try to knock this Hitmonlee out. I'm going for Fire Blast since it is the more accurate move. And then we're to the Hitmonchan. It goes Thunder Punch, but we survive. So now we just need to land enough hits. We're out of Fire Blast PP, so we have to go into Thunder, which is less accurate, but we get it to go. So we do get to level 35 as we defeat the Black Belt Bros. Now we have the other rando trainers in here who aren't quite as fast. So maybe, just maybe, we have a chance. We're gonna have to see if we can get through Chuck though. Unfortunately, these fights do rely entirely on actually landing Sing though, because if we get hit by like 2 hits from a karate chop, we're dead. So the second black belt, Nob or Nob, I'm not sure exactly how to say it, he beat me multiple times because of the fact that I couldn't land Sing, even though I'm faster than both of his Pokemon. It's kind of sad that Machoke as a mid-stage Pokemon is slower than an Igglybuff here. Even if we are at a higher level, it's still pretty ridiculous, honestly. But with that, we have made it to Chuck. We have a super effective move in Thunder, so it's just a question of whether or not we can get the win. Let's test this out. So Chuck, attempt number 1. Once again, I'm going to Sing on the Primeape. If we just get 2 karate chops, we simply go down, but I think that's perfectly fine because, yet again, this all really comes down to whether or not we get hit by Dynamic Punch from that Poliwrath. I'm going to go Fire Blast against Primeape since it is more accurate. It gets a 2-hit KO. That brings out Poliwrath. It hits the Dynamic Punch and we go down. But basically against Poliwrath, we're talking about like a 1 in 4 chance of being able to put it to sleep with Sing. Basically, it misses the Dynamic Punch and then we hit the Sing. It's slightly better than that, but not really. If we get hit by Dynamic Punch, I'm pretty sure even from full health, we simply go down. This time he does miss Dynamic Punch though. He full heals. I go for the Thunder though and get a critical hit that one-shots. So yeah, there is that luck as well. So there we go. We have managed to get through this section with Igglybuff. Was it pretty? No. And I'm pretty sure that Igglybuff is going to hit a wall pretty soon. I just see no way that we continue that far into the game with this Pokemon. But who knows? Maybe it's enough to get through the next Rocket section and get a bunch of levels because we are in the fast level up group and maybe we find ourselves at the end of the game somehow being able to progress. I'm not super hopeful though. So with all of those normal types successfully completed, we can see that the Gen 1 versions of the Clefairy and Jigglypuff line managed to get into the pass column, but the babies have fallen into that OP unreasonable TMs category, and I'm really worried about them going forward because we could see that was becoming very inconsistent. We're talking multiple OP TMs for each of these Pokemon to actually progress to this point in the game, but they are still technically alive on minimum battles. So with that, we have our last Pokemon today. It's accidentally jumped into the fail column, but we'll get that corrected depending on the results. It is time for Ninetales, and then we'll just follow up Ninetales with Vulpix, which is being supported by channel member Merkel, the very first channel member on this channel, and the Growlith being supported by channel member Kanbei. We'll just have to see if those first stage fire types can get through, no matter what the result of this Ninetales is, and we'll round off with the scout ahead with my personal Arcanine Henry. With that, let's get into this. Now, Ninetales finished the last section with Dig, Ember, Confuse Ray, and Safeguard as its moveset, and we don't learn any new level up moves in this section. Fire Spin doesn't come in until level 43, and I mean, it's not a good move in this generation anyway. So the lack of fire type stab other than Ember could be a problem here. We're just gonna have to see, and we may need to learn a stronger physical move to progress in the game. Headbutt will be a possibility here. We could even go Iron Tail strats after defeating Jasmine, and I do think Jasmine will be the easiest of the gym leaders here. So let's just see how this goes. Now, even though Jasmine, I think, is the easiest gym leader, I'm still going to go do the Rocket Hideout first, just because I fully expect that we're going to need extra levels to make this go, given that Ember really isn't that strong of a move. But sure enough, Ninetales makes it to the end of the Rocket Hideout at least with no issues whatsoever. So let's just get into this and see how this final fight goes. Against the Arbok, clearly Dig is the play. It's going to get an easy 2-hit KO on this Pokemon. We level up to level 29 right there as the Merkel comes out. I'm going to go for Ember. We get the burn here, which is very nice. And with that, we do get the 2-hitter. Probably is a 3-hitter without that. Gloom is weak to Ember, but it still takes 2 hits to take that Pokemon down. But we have defeated the Rocket Executive at the end with no major issues. But now with that done, I actually think it's worth going into the Pryce gym at least once just to test this out. The entire logic being, of course, that Pryce, while he does have a couple water types, does not use water or ground type moves here with any of his Pokemons, and we resist the ice type. So this shouldn't be terrible. The only real question is, do we need to add on a move like Headbutt here in order to actually get through? At the very least, I think it's going to be possible, so let's just test this and see. So first attempt here against the Seal, I'm going to go Confuse Ray on this Pokemon. It goes Icy Wind and gets a speed drop, but once it's confused, I'm just going to hit it with Dig. This looks like it's probably a 3-hit KO. Still, when he hits himself in confusion, it does help us get closer to that KO range. Now he goes for the rest, however, and that could be the issue in this one, is that if he can just go rest over and over again, he can probably just heal up. Still, we do get through that Pokemon. That brings us to the Dugong. Dugong is neutrally affected by fire type moves, so we can even go for Ember just to see what kind of range we get. We even get a nice bird here. So I'm going to now Dig, and it will rest in order to heal up damage. Yet again, we can see that this Pokemon's not taking that much damage from our moves. So we really have to keep this one confused and hope that we can actually manage to slowly whittle it down. It does hit itself in confusion a couple times though, so we do ultimately take it down. That brings out Piloswine, which is weak against fire. Still, this appears to be a 3-hit KO. I'm going to confuse it. It hits itself in confusion. It snaps out of confusion immediately after that though, but then hits itself again. He Hyper Potions. We get the burn this time, and he hits himself one more time. So we actually win against Pryce on the first attempt. We probably shouldn't have, but hey, we'll take the victory as Ninetales now gets to move on with a boost to its special attack at least. It may have a chance of dealing enough damage now against Jasmine to get through more reliably. And honestly, if that fight didn't work, I think we could have just gone for something like a Headbutt strat in order to get that to work, and it would probably have been just fine. Now, it does look like we never went to the lighthouse with this Pokemon, so we're also going to be able to gain maybe a level or two by going through the lighthouse trainers. We got to get up there in order to talk to Jasmine and get her quest anyway. And while we're in Cyanwood, we can actually just take on the randos in Chuck's gym because unlike the previous normal types, we have no weakness here. So maybe we can just get a couple more levels before we have to take on either gym leader. So against the Black Belt Bros, I'm going to confuse Hitmonlee first. Double Kick does pretty significant damage to me, but it can also hit itself in confusion, doing pretty good damage, and we get a crit, so we get through that one just fine. That brings out the Hitmonchan next, where we can go Confuse Ray. It hits itself. Then I'm just going to use Ember because we could get the chance to burn. It tries to go Fire Punch against me. Good job. And with that, we're going to be able to knock it out in just a couple more hits. So we get through the Black Belt Bros just fine, and now we can take on the rest of the gym trainers without really too much difficulty, I think. And sure enough, we get through all those randos without any major issues. So I'm going to go back up and take on Jasmine next, just to have a little more HP. I think we should level up in this fight. that might allow us to survive against a Surf from that Poliwrath, and that might be all that we actually need. So Jasmine attempt number 1, let's just see how she goes with our Ninetales. First up, we've got the 2 Magnemites, and I think Dig is the best play. It's 4 times super effective here, so it's going to be pretty strong, and it's basically guaranteed to one-shot those Pokemon. Out next comes the Steelix. She clearly knows we're going to destroy the second Magnemite, so I'm going to confuse this Pokemon. She goes Rock Throw, but then I'm just going to start spamming Ember, which did pretty decent damage. It hasn't hit itself in confusion in spite of the fact that it's been confused this entire time. She uses a Hyper Potion, but then we get the range to knock it out. So we get to level 33 as the last Magnemite comes out. We just go Dig and get the easy victory. So Jasmine was pretty close there. It was probably a range to knock out the Steelix from that point, but if Steelix just hit itself in confusion even one time, we would have simply won based on that. So I don't feel too bad about that range. I think that most of the time with a Confuse Ray plus Ember strategy, at least with a max DV's Ninetales, you're going to get through that fight without any major issues. But that brings us to the ultimate test of this section, for this Pokemon at least, which is Chuck. If he just goes Surf over and over and over again, he probably wins, but if he does stupid things like Mind Reader, he might actually lose. So let's get into this and see how it actually goes. But since Dig is our strongest move here, I'm going to use the King's Rock just to add the chance to flinch here, because maybe that could make a difference. Let's get into it and find out. First up, we have the Primeape. I think the play is to confuse this Pokemon and then go into Ember. He gets burned off of that, so when he goes Karate Chop, it didn't do that much, and we're able to knock him out in 2 turns, though he did get 2 Karate Chops on me. Now I'm going to confuse the Poliwrath. It hits itself in confusion turn 1. We go Dig, and we get the flinch on that first Dig. The second one, he goes Hypnosis, and there's nothing we can do about that, but he misses a Dynamic Punch twice. Hits the third one though, and now we're confused, and he just goes Surf to simply end us. So it's pretty clear that this one's not quite working at this point, but let's give it a few more attempts just to see. This time we're going to get through the Primeape on full health because it just hit itself in confusion twice. We can go Confuse Ray on the Poliwrath. It misses the Hypnosis turn 1. Then it misses Surf while we're underground. It hits itself in confusion. It snaps out of confusion here, but we get a nice critical hit with our Dig. Now it hits itself in confusion again. We dig underground. It manages to land the Hypnosis while we're underground because of the Mind Reader, and now Surf does massive damage. We have to wake up here if we're going to have a shot, and unfortunately we couldn't wake up and we simply go down. Next attempt back to Poliwrath. It goes Mind Reader, and then it hits itself in confusion. Then it hits Dynamic Punch while we're underground because of the Mind Reader. It hits Dynamic Punch again. Fortunately, because I set up the safeguard, it's not able to actually confuse me, but we still end up losing that fight. The fact that Mind Reader lets him hit me while I'm underground is pretty OP, honestly. Next attempt, he does hit himself in confusion once. He tries to Surf while we're underground. I'm just going to confuse him again. I'm going to set up the safeguard so that he can't put me to sleep. He's going for Dynamic Punch while I'm underground, and then he knocks me out the next turn. So it's pretty clear that this just doesn't work. We're giving him too many turns to set up there with the Mind Reader in order to knock us out. Now, technically, Iron Tail is the strongest physical move that we could use here, but it is resisted by a water type, so it's not something we want to use at this point. So I think that Headbutt is the play. The question is, what move do we forget? Well, in this next section, there aren't going to be a lot of Pokemon that are weak to fire type moves. In spite of the fact that it is our neutral typing, it's just not a very common typing to actually be super effective in this next part of the game, and honestly, we're going to have to get to Fire Blast for the late game if we're going to actually have a good same type move. So I think Ember is the one to go. So I'm going to replace that with Headbutt, and let's just see what happens when we have the Headbutt strats now. So in this case, I'm not really going to mess around. I'm just going to go straight for Headbutt against the Primeape. It's an easy 2-hit KO. Now we get to Poliwrath. I will still confuse this Pokemon. It goes Mind Reader, but I'm just going to start headbutting. It looks to be a 4-hitter. He hits himself in confusion. Now he finally lands the Hypnosis, but misses the first Dynamic Punch, misses the second Dynamic Punch. He hits the third one, misses the fourth fourth one, hits the fifth one, and we just couldn't wake up, so we lose. It's pretty clear that just setting up Safeguard is the play there in order to prevent him from being able to use sleep on us. And at that point, we should pretty much be good to go. We can see that Surf isn't two-shotting us there, it's three-shotting us, but still, we need him to not use Surf sometimes if we're going to get through. Here we get a nice critical hit though, so it took 7 attempts, but we did ultimately defeat Chuck with headbutt strats. It's not pretty, but the only thing we could do beyond that would be to go for return, really. That's the only stronger physical move that we have that's actually going to be effective against Chuck's Pokemon. Still, Ninetales ultimately does get through. Not pretty, but certainly possible. It would be much nicer if this Pokemon actually learned some sort of decent fire type move. But with that done, it is time to get into our member picks, and I'm going to start with the Vulpix from Merkel. Let's see if his girl can actually manage to get through this section. And of course, the Vulpix that we had finished the last section with 69 HP, very nice. And we had Ember, Confuse Ray, Dig, and Hypnosis. Hypnosis was the move that was added on by the channel member Merkel here in order to give Vulpix a fighting chance in this challenge. Now outside of that, I mean, the moveset and the strategy is basically the same. The only difference is that rather than Safeguard strats, we are going to have access to Sleep strats. And while Sleep isn't perfect in this generation, it is overall pretty strong, so it should give us at least a chance of getting through every fight, especially given how slow most of these trainers' Pokemon are in this section of the game. Still, I think we need all the levels we can get. Let's get this Rocket Hideout done, and then go try our hand at Pryce one time. Now, the big issue for this Vulpix is its lack of defensive stats, and it doesn't really hit that hard either. It is pretty fast though, and that does help get through a lot of these fights, so we're just gonna have to see if we can manage to get through here. But sleep strats are kind of important with this Pokemon. We lost to this basement floor executive once already, just simply because the Raticate between Scary Face to reduce our speed and Hyper Fang was able to knock us out. And we can see we're not getting great ranges here, like a critical hit Ember does less than half. Still, we do manage to take it down this time. Coughing, if we can put it to sleep, we will, just because that way we can have turns to set up Dig. It is also worth noting that Confuse Ray and Hypnosis do stack together kind of nicely, because you can make it so that your opponent has essentially a 50-50 chance of hitting themselves in confusion on the turn that they wake up, and that can be the difference between getting through a fight and failing. So we may have that be our strat in really tough situations, but for now I think we can just go for Hypnosis, and that's enough on these trainers. So we've made it to the final executive. Let's just see how this fight goes. First up, we've got the Arbok. I'm going to put it to sleep, and this is one I will confuse because we have to dig, so it's going to take multiple turns. But once it wakes up, it does have the chance to hit itself in confusion, which it does, so we managed to get through with no damage. Now on the Murkrow, I still think we put this one to sleep because I don't expect Ember to get even a 2-hit KO. Nope, it's going to be a 3 or 4 hitter from the looks of things. We do get the 3-hit KO range though. That brings out the Gloom, which isn't really scary for us. It drops Acid, but we simply knock it out the next turn. So just like that, we have gotten through the Rocket Hideout with one reset on that basement floor executive. You know, he doesn't even get a top floor office. No, they put him all the way at the bottom. He's like the least of all Rocket executives. Even getting stunted on by a Vulpix, come on. But now with that done, I think we're going to follow the same route of going to Pryce. The main difference here is that we can actually put Pryce's Pokemon to sleep, and we will be faster than everything at this point. So it should be a pretty easy fight to get through if the sleep actually sticks. Let's see how this goes. So Pryce attempt number 1, I'm going for the Hypnosis on Seal. We get it to sleep. I'm also going to Confuse Ray here just to give it a chance to hit itself in confusion when it wakes up. Pokemon cannot snap out of confusion while they are asleep. That can only happen while they're awake, so it also gives us an additional chance of being able to get through some tough fights. Still, we can really see our defensive stats being pretty bad here, as we're all the way down to 9 HP when we finally get to Dugong, and it just headbutts us down. Still, I think there are some strategies for getting through here, but before I waste too much time on it, I'm just going to go down to Chuck's gym, because in one level we'll get access to the move Flamethrower. Since Vulpix actually does learn level up moves, it is a possibility that just having a stronger fire type move is all that we'll actually need to do decent damage to opponents, because even if it's resisted, it will be basically on par with using the dig that we're using right now, and that could really change a lot of fights. We could also take on Jasmine first, since her gym is going to give us access to that badge boost in defense, and with Flamethrower, I expect to completely destroy her. But let's just see how this actually works out. Before all that though, let's come into Chuck's gym and take on the Black Belt Bros, so that hopefully we can gain an additional level. Now, we are faster than Hitmonlee, but if we can't land Hypnosis, we get 2-shot here by Jump Kick. So this is not going to be a perfectly consistent fight. Once we do manage to land the hit though, we will confuse this Pokemon and now go into the Embers. And we can see Embers doing very little. This looks like a 6-hitter. So what we really need is for it to stay asleep a lot of turns and then to hit itself in confusion on the turn that it wakes up, if it wakes up. This time we get a nice critical hit, and then we're able to basically whittle this one down. So we get through. It took 3 attempts to get through Yoshi there. Now we also have to beat Nob or Nobe though, so this is going to be a little bit difficult. We do land the sleep on Hitmonchan though, and get the Confuse Ray. So now we just need it to stay asleep, or when it wakes up to use bad moves. Here it woke up but hit itself in confusion, which was exactly according to plan, and now we just get to whittle that Pokemon down. So we managed to get through, sorry, that wasn't Nobe, that was Lao. But we did manage to get through that black belt just fine. And with that, I think the rest of the traders in this gym aren't going to be really too hard, but this next guy should get us to level 31, so we get access to Flamethrower. And sure enough, we get it, so I'm going to learn Flamethrower over Ember, and now that's like a way stronger move on this Pokemon. And sure enough, now we're able to one-shot at least Mankeys at this point, and I expect the Primeape here to be a 2-hit KO. In fact, we get the 1-hitter there, so we're looking a lot better now that we have gotten access to Flamethrower, and I'm ready to go take on Jasmine to see just how strong this move turns out to be. And Jasmine's badge boost in defense will actually be really relevant here, because even Pryce doesn't really want to use special moves against us, because he knows that his ice moves are resisted, and Headbutt is a pretty strong move, so he's mostly going to headbutt us with the first 2 Pokemon, and I expect him to mostly be going for the Fury attack with the 3rd Pokemon, Piloswine, so it just kind of makes sense that the badge boost in defense will help us get through that with less damage, especially given how low our defense currently is. So it's time for our first attempt at Jasmine. I'm going to go all in on the Flamethrowers, and let's just see if it works. First up, we've got the Magnemite. We go Flamethrower, and it just goes down in a single hit as we get to level 32. Steelix comes out next. We go Flamethrower and do over half. It mixes a Rock Throw, and then it doesn't matter that she goes for the Hyper Potion. She just gets knocked out in 2 hits, and that brings out the final Magnemite, which never stood a chance, as we just Flamethrower that Pokemon down. And now with that done, I'm going to actually go back to Chuck's gym, just because if I do beat him, I can get access to Fly. That will make going back to Pryce really, really easy. But of course, if he's not working out, Pryce will be the play. Still, I'm going to heal up here in Cyanwood, so that if we do have to go back to Pryce, we'll just be able to teleport back here after the fact. Still, since we're here, let's just give Chucky Boy a try. Roy Merkel, can you manage to win against this Poliwrath? Let's find out. So Chuck, attempt number 1, I'm going to go for Flamethrower on the Primeape. It's a 2-hit KO right here, but we do take that one down nice and easy. Now we get the Poliwrath. I'm going for the Hypnosis. We miss twice, and then he hits the Dynamic Punch, but we do finally get him to sleep. We know he's going to full heal here though, so we'll put him to sleep again. Now Confuse Ray, and now I'm going to see what Flamethrower does. That did 32 damage, so this is going to be a 4-hit KO with that move, and that was a crit. On the contrary, we can also use Dig, but that didn't really do that much. Still, he hits himself in confusion when he wakes up. We put him back to sleep. Flamethrower, looks like maybe 2 more hits from this move to knock him out. He stays asleep, and just like that, we managed to beat Chuck on the first attempt. So we get to level 33, and we have defeated 2 gyms, including the one that is theoretically the hardest for us. Without a badge boost in special, that's actually pretty darn legit. So now I'm just going to teach Fly to Kenya, and let's fly back to Mahogany Town so that we can take on Pryce. And after beating both Jasmine and Chuck, we are coming into this fight at level 33. So quite a bit stronger than we were before. And let's just see what kind of range we get now. We get Headbutt turn 1 by the seal, but we get it to sleep turn 2. We confuse it. Now let's just see what Flamethrower does. This looks like it might be a 3 or 4 hit KO. Still, we do take it down. That brings out the Dugong, where we land Hypnosis turn 1. We're going to Confuse Ray this Pokemon. And now back to the Flamethrower, which is neutrally effective here. And this looks like it might be a 3-hitter. Sure enough, it is. So we take that one down. We're on to Piloswine, which is weak to Flamethrower. I'm just going to go all in on attack. This appears to be a 2-hit KO. He can Hyper Potion all he wants. It does not matter. We win on this attempt. So once you get access to Flamethrower, honestly, none of the gyms are really that scary. Chuck is the most scary, but because we have the egg move Hypnosis, he's really not that bad with this Vulpix. So massive thank you to Roy Merkel for supporting for like a couple years now. Both here and on RBY Pokemon Challenges. I just can't thank you enough, man. Let's keep your Vulpix going into the next section where, honestly, if it can outspeed against Clair's Pokemon and use Hypnosis, it probably has a decent chance of progressing. But let's find out if that's the case next time. But with that done, it's time to move on to our second member pick. Channel member Kanbei has saved FireFLuff, the Growlith, and we are coming into this section with Dig, Headbutt, Crunch, and Fire Blast. Crunch was added on to help us get through the Rival 2 fight because it has the ability to lower special defense. Fire Blast is obviously the strongest move of this Pokemon, and then Headbutt and Dig are just good strategies overall for the Morty section that we just got through. Now, of course, there are a couple issues that Growlith has. One, it is in the slow level up group, so it's not going to gain as many levels as even the Vulpix that we just had in this section of the game. But secondly, this Pokemon has no sort of status moves, so it's not going to be able to just rely on, sleep or confusion or something to get through tough spots. It's all going to be about our damage output or maybe some flinches. Still, I think we've got enough moves with enough power to make this work, so let's just see how it actually goes. Now, we actually get the chance at level 26 to learn the move Takedown, which would be stronger than Headbutt, but I don't think I'm going to learn this move, and the reason is pretty simple. It has recoil, and I think later on, if we really need a stronger normal type move, we can just use Return. So I just don't think that move has any real value in a challenge like this. But who knows, I may be wrong when we get to Clair or something and we need more physical damage. But like I said, I think Max Power Return will be coming pretty soon around that time. So honestly, I don't think it's actually giving up that much. But sure enough, we make it to the end of the Rocket Hideout without too much issue. We had a couple resets on the trainer in the basement, yet again, just because we don't have great defense. But it wasn't actually that hard to get through. It was just a matter of knowing where to use Fire Blast in that fight. But now we've made it to the final executive where Dig is enough to 2-shot the Arbok. We 3-hit KO the Murkrow with Headbutt. And now Fire Blast should just finish off the Gloom. Sure enough, it does as we get to level 28. But now with that done, I'm once again going to try my hand at Pryce because he's not going to use ice type moves. I think we're faster than his team at this point, and we have the advantage of having a wider variety of moves. If we get to the final Piloswine, Fire Blast may just be enough to even get the 1-hit KO. So I'm just going to test this and find out. So Pryce attempt number 1, I'm just going to stick with Headbutt here on the seal. We flinch it turn 1, and it turns out to just be a 3-hit KO. Dugong comes out next. It's technically neutrally affected by Fire Blast, so I just want to see what kind of range we get. We do slightly less than half, so I'm going to Headbutt it after that, and then go Fire Blast again to finish that Pokemon off. That brings out the Piloswine. We hit the first Fire Blast, and it's a 1-hit KO. So FireFLuff gets through just fine on Pryce on the first attempt. Doesn't need to go down to Chuck's gym or anything like that in this one. It just simply gets the victory. But now, given our moveset, I do think that taking on Jasmine next is the most logical play, since between Dig for the Magnemites and Fire Blast for that Steelix, I think we're just going to be doing massive damage here and get through the fight pretty darn easily. But let's see if that's actually the case. So it is time for Jasmine, and let's see if Kanbei's FireFLuff just gets the job done. done here. First up, we have the Magnemites, and Dig is 100% accurate, so there's no reason to do anything other than Dig here. It's going to be a guaranteed one-hit KO on those Magnemites. Once we get to the Steelix, we'll take the lower accuracy to just use Fire Blast, which gets a one-hit KO, and then Dig will simply finish off the second Magnemite, so we get through on the first attempt with no damage taken from Jasmine. It's pretty clear that Fire Blast is just too strong for this point in the game, but hey, we'll take it. And with that, it's time to get into Chuck's gym. We've got the randos still waiting in front of him, so we will probably gain 1 or 2 levels before we actually take Chuck on. Let's see how the Black Belt bros go. Here against the Hitmonlee, I think the best play is to go Headbutt, because Hitmonlee has much lower defense than special defense here. Headbutt looks to be a 2-hit KO, so we get through and get to level 30 right there. That brings out the Hitmonchan. I'm going to stick with the same strategy here just because of its lower defense. We get to flinch and easily get through with no damage taken. And we completely destroy all of the other gym trainers here. They really weren't hard. So now it's time to just get into Chuck. We've got a couple Fire Blast PP left that I'm going to try to use on the Primeape, and then I think Headbutt strats are the way to go on the Poliwrath, but let's just see if it actually works out. So Chucky boy, attempt number 1, Fire Blast on the Primeape gets a 1-hit KO. That brings out Poliwrath. We go for Headbutt. It does not do as much as I thought, only 20 damage, so this is a 5-hitter. We do get a flinch turn 1. He misses Hypnosis turn 2. He misses Hypnosis turn 3, and then we simply knock him out because he just tried to Hypnosis every single turn and missed. That is ridiculous. Now, of course, it's worth noting we did have Charcoal on here. I don't know if that actually affected the ranges or not, because I just kind of slapped it on before this and was just running Charcoal the whole time. But hey, it worked out. We needed a lot of misses from that Hypnosis to get it to work. We probably should have gone in with a Mint Berry, if I'm being perfectly honest. But hey, we'll just take the luck. Kanbei, you have gotten through. Now it's time to see how we do in the next section when we get to Clair, though, given that Fire Blast isn't really going to help us that much, and we don't have any Dragon-type moves at this point in the game, so that could be an issue. But for now, FireFLuff is moving on, and now it's time to check in on our last Pokemon for today. So with that done, officially we've completed all the Pokemon that we're doing in the Jasmine section for today. We're up to 26 Pokemon legitimately passing Jasmine. Now 6 Pokemon have gotten through with OPTMs or other struggle strats, and 2 have failed, but all of our member picks that we've tested so far are continuing in this challenge. However, there's one last Pokemon we have to check. That is the Arcanine that is already sitting up there in the pass column. This is my personal Pokemon, and every time that I get to my personal Pokemon in any section, I use it to scout ahead, because we need to know what's going to happen in this next section with the Goldenrod Rocket section, with Clair, and we're even going to go all the way up to Rival 5 and Victory Road here, assuming that my Arcanine can make it through. This is my personal Pokemon, so if it fails at any point, I get to do whatever I want in order to get it through. This is basically my personal member pick, and I'm going to make sure that this Pokemon ends up defeating the entire game. Not sure how I'm going to do it, but somehow I promise you it will get through the entire game. So with that, it is time to continue the game with my personal Pokemon, Henry. He's named after my German Shepherd that I had as a kid. Don't ask me why his name was Henry. That was my mother. But we are coming into this section with Flame Wheel, Leer, Takedown, and Headbutt. Basically, the only move that wasn't on our starting moveset that we've changed out is Roar. Or Headbutt. That's it. Otherwise, we're running exactly what this Pokemon's standard starting moveset is. And now it's time to just make our way to go take on this whole Rocket section. Now, one of the main things that I'm going to be doing in this section, of course, is I'm going to be basically putting Togepi into the PC with all of these runs, because we no longer need that Pokemon. What we do need is the Gyarados that we caught earlier. That is going to be our Waterfall and Whirlpool Pokemon. Not even immediately relevant, but it's something that could matter in the end. It's also worth noting that at this point, the guy who was blocking the way here is gone, so we can make our way over to the ice path. Mostly, I'm just going to pick up the elixir that's right here and then go straight into this section. There are a couple things that we unlock, of course, in this part of the game. I'm not going to do something that's completely exhaustive here, but there are a couple things that I think are worthy of note. Of course, we have to get Waterfall right here. That could possibly be relevant for a Pokemon. I don't think there's anything that would learn Waterfall, though, that doesn't learn Surf, and Surf would be the superior move in every case. So I'm not sure if Waterfall is actually a viable move by any means, but it is something that is available right here. We also, of course, get access in this section to Never Melt Ice if we need that for something that is using Ice-type moves. Obviously, with this Arcanine, that is completely irrelevant. But what is far more relevant for a lot of Pokemon is we can get TM44 for Rest right here. Rest is significant in that it allows you to heal in battle, but it also gives you a way to get rid of status. That's one of the reasons why Rest has always been classified by me as a bit of an OP or broken TM, is because of the fact that it's not just healing HP, it does double duty. And so while yes, you are giving up some turns by being asleep, in an itemless solo challenge, it's one of the strongest TMs that you can get, provided that you can actually find a spot to set it up. So that's just something very important to keep in mind. And I'm going to be avoiding rest strats as much as possible. I'll use them if I absolutely have to, but never in any other case. Now, it's also worth noting you cannot go into the Dragon's Den at this point. So the most that we can do is get access to Blackthorn, and there is a move deleter in this section. And so this guy can actually allow us to make Pokemon forget moves. For example, if I wanted Gyarados to forget Surf, I can simply do that. This is not a generation that protects HM moves or like your last HM user from deleting moves. So it's just incredibly important to remember that that is an option for any Pokemon at this point that has learned an HM move like Surf or Cut or anything that they decide they no longer want on their moveset. It is possible to simply get rid of it right there. Now, as we get into the Rocket section, most of these trainers I expect to not be very hard. In fact, I think there's only 5 trainers in this section, including the Rival 4 and 5 fights and Clair, that I think will actually have any potential to be a wall for any Pokemon. The rest of these are basically just cannon fodder to get completely destroyed. However, the first trainer that I do think could be difficult is this first executive at the top of the radio tower who has a 6 Pokemon team, 5 Coughings and a Wheezing. The issue with this trainer is that most of his Pokemon know the move Self-Destruct. So if they just all boom on you, if you aren't one-hit KOing, they could be enough to simply knock a Pokemon out. Sludge is also a pretty strong move at this point in the game, so if anything is weak against poison, it's going to have a tough time getting through here. Fortunately, my Arcanine is more than powerful enough to simply use Flame Wheel to one-shot these Coughings, so I think the only Pokemon we have to worry about is the Wheezing. He sends that one out fourth, and there are 2 more Coughings behind this, but Sludge didn't do that much, so we get an easy 2-hit KO, and as long as the rest of these are one-hitters, we will get through on the first attempt. Still, I have seen Pokemon struggle there. Meganium might be one that struggles. I've also seen in my Celebi solo run that I did before on this channel that was one of the trainers that it actually struggled a little bit, albeit I was running on 0 DVs in that one, so it was the weakest possible Celebi, and Confusion just wasn't reliably one-hit KOing there. That could change in this one with max DVs. I'll be very interested to see, but for now, that is a trainer to just keep in the back of our minds. But now in the basement, we have to take on rival number 4, and this could be a tough fight for a lot of Pokemon. He's still got that Haunter, he's gonna have his fully evolved Ace here, and he's added a couple more Pokemon to his team, so let's just see how this actually works. He leads off with the Golbat, of course. I'm going to go Takedown here, and that does give me the one-hit KO. He sends out Feraligatr next. I think Headbutt is the play. Water Gun didn't do that much, and this looks to be a 3-hit KO, so we knock that one out nice and easy. easy. Now we have the Haunter. I'm going for the Flame Wheel. This is going to be a 2-hit KO, but he curses. Flame Wheel will simply destroy the Magnemite. And now Sneasel, as a Ice-type Pokemon, never stood a chance. Flame Wheel just destroyed it, so we get through on the first attempt with Henry. After that, though, I expect that there are no really tough trainers until we get to the top of the second part of the radio tower. So let's just get straight to that final battle. Now, this is the point in the game where we will also get access to Sleep Talk, and Sleep Talk could be used with Rest, of course. I would consider that to be in the OPTMs category, just because it's a little bit too strong in my personal opinion. You can kind of debate me on that one in the comments down below, but it's going to be one of my last ditch effort attempts with a Pokemon that has otherwise failed with everything else before we go into Rest Sleep Talk strats. Now, Sleep Talk only in a situation where, for example, an opponent is highly likely to put us to sleep, and we're using that as a strategy to be able to then still continue to attack them while they're using Hypnosis or Sleep Powder against us, I actually think is a perfectly reasonable strategy because it's so niche that it could be interesting to use. It's not something we're going to deal with anytime really soon, but it could, I guess, come up maybe on Karen with her Gengar. We'll just have to see if that ever is actually the case or not, but for now, I'm going to just have that TM in the bag with all of these runs as one of those last-ditch effort ways to get through this section of the game. Now, I understand that some people might disagree with me on this and things like Return and things like Hidden Power, etc. The biggest reason why I don't like these moves is because basically everything learns them, so we would very easily end up in a situation where we're just running the same strategy with everything, which I don't think is terribly interesting. It may be the case that that's the only way to progress with a Pokemon, and at that point we won't just completely exclude those strategies, but I just don't think that it's something that should be like a go-to for every single Pokemon, because otherwise we just risk bogging down the series with 20 Pokemon per episode that are all doing the exact same thing. I just don't think personally that that's very interesting, but you can obviously tell me that I'm wrong, but who knows, maybe one of these days I will make a video just using the generic TMs of this generation to see if we can beat the game even with really weak Pokemon, because that could be really interesting to try out. But with everything done up to this point, we have now made it to the top of the radio tower. There's the last executive here. I do think he could be hard. He has the Houndoom that is pretty strong and fast and could be a wall yet again for Pokemon that are weak against dark or fire type moves. So against this one, I'm going to lead off with the Headbutt on Houndour. That's just an easy one-hitter. Coughing, we can go for the Flame Wheel, and that also gets a one-hit KO. Now we're up against Houndoom. Now, because my Arcanine is a legendary Pokemon, we obviously outclass Houndoom in every possible way. But we can see that Bite and Feint Attack are pretty strong moves on its moveset. It has Ember, has Smog, though I think we would be pretty happy in most cases if it used Smog against us. But in this case, I think we just go for the Headbutt strats. This is going to be an easy 2-hit KO to simply take that Pokemon down because Henry is just way too overpowered. Now, of course, in this section, we could normally get access to the Pink Bow right here, though we've already gotten that much earlier in this challenge. But here we can also pick up TM11, which is Sunny Day. For a fire type, this could be a useful move at some point because it will power up our fire type moves, but Solar Beam will also be available as we make our way to the Elite Four, and Sunny Day plus Solar Beam strats obviously is a pretty good play with our grass type Pokemon if they manage to get this far. Fire types and even ground types, for example, could also want to use that move to dampen water type moves that are being used against them. So there are some uses of that move outside of even powering up your own attacks. So now at this point, I'm going to actually do the radio quiz with all of my Pokemon. Generally speaking, I avoid getting the radio card until this point because it's just kind of a waste of time to go over here in the radio tower. But now that we have gotten access to that, we are ready to go and take on Clair's gym. In theory, this could be kind of hard for my Arcanine, given the fact that Clair's Pokemon all resist our fire type moves. In fact, the Kingdra is going to 4 times resist them, but we have strong normal type moves here, so I think we have at least a chance of getting through, especially given the fact that we are mostly a physical attacker. We should be doing doing pretty decent damage at this point in the game. Still, we are taking pretty decent damage from water type moves, so it's not like we're just sweeping through all of the trainers in here. We either have to go for takedown, which results in us taking recoil, so we have to run out and heal, or we're using headbutt but not getting one-hit KOs, in which case we also have to run out to heal periodically. Still, we do get through to Clair without any major issues. The question is, are we strong enough to actually get through at this point? Or do we need to learn some new moves or use special held items to get this one to go? I'm going to go in with my moveset as is first, just to see if I can manage to get the victory. It's also worth noting that Iron Tail could be a strategy against the Dragonairs if we're not doing quite enough damage. But honestly, there's not a lot available to us that we can actually use to get through at this section of the game, assuming that those Dragonairs are not one-hit KOs, which I do not think they will be. I think they're at least two hitters. Maybe we need to flinch a bunch. Let's find out. So Clair attempt number 1 with our Arcanine. We're at level 40, so this is the lowest level you'll ever reach this fight at on minimum battles. We are a slow level up Pokemon after all. And here Headbutt is clearly a 2-hitter, but she misses the first Thunder Wave on us, so we do manage to get through that first Pokemon. Now she comes out with the Kingdra. I'm going to go Headbutt, and this looks like it might be a 4-hit KO, whereas Surf is just going to be a 2-hitter on us. And she has the Hyper Potion here. Still, we get a nice flinch there, but we couldn't quite get the range to actually get through. Let's try this one again. This time Kingdra goes for Smokescreen turn 1 on us, and then we get the flinch. However, she's always going to go for that Hyper Potion there, and we're going to need to flinch multiple times if we're actually getting through this. It looks like the range might be such that going takedown is the better play here just to get more damage output. So I do think we have to get through the first Dragonair without getting paralyzed, though. That could either be a crit or a flinch or just a Thunder Wave miss, though, so there are plenty of ways to get that to go. Now with takedown, this looks like a 3-hit KO on the Kingdra. The reason to go for the takedown, of course, is because of the fact that it will reduce the number of turns to knock this Pokemon out, but without a crit, it just simply doesn't get the job done. What I do think might work is going Leer into Headbutt here, though, because it seems like the Kingdra is not guaranteed to go for Surf on the first turn. In fact, a lot of times it's going for Smokescreen. So if we go Leer here, it does Surf this time, but now we can Headbutt, and we're nearly doing half. It might even be a range here, and that might open us up to being able to get a single flinch or a critical hit and actually get through that Pokemon. In fact, it might be worth going with Pink Bow here just to boost the power of our Headbutt a little bit after that Leer, and maybe then we're guaranteed to get the 2-hit KO there. So I'm just going to reset for a run where I get through this first Dragonair without getting paralyzed by Thunder Wave. Yet again, I've said it's not really that luck-based. It's pretty reasonable to go for that level of luck, since we could just get the flinch here, or it could miss, or we could get the crit. All of those are perfectly fine for getting through this first Pokemon. Finally, we do get that level of luck. We're going to go for the Leer on Kingdra. It goes for the Smokescreen. We hit the first Headbutt, it goes Surf, and we hit the second Headbutt. So we take that Pokemon down as we get to level 41. That brings out the second Dragonair that does not know any water type moves, though Thunderbolt does a lot. And now the last Dragonair, it just goes Dragon Breath, but because we were paralyzed, we were too slow to avoid taking 2 hits. We would have just needed a crit there in order to finish that one off, though. So this is clearly a winnable fight. The question is just how consistent is it? And it mostly comes down to avoiding a couple of Thunder Waves in this one. If we can get through those, I think we're basically good to go. Obviously, getting that level of luck could be as simple as just getting flinches in the right spots, as we do this time. So that brings us to the final Dragonair, where we don't have any paralysis. It goes Thunder Wave, but Dragon Breath doesn't do that much. So finally, we do win against Clair. It's not perfectly consistent with this Arcanine, but we do not have to go for OPTMs here or any sort of broken strategy. Obviously, Return could have been an attempt, Return with a King's Rock, for example, but this was enough to get the job done. And now, of course, we're going to get access to Dragon Breath as well, so we're going to have a way to actually be able to deal decent damage to Dragon-type Pokemon later on. So it might be worth having that move by the time that we get to Lance. Now in the Dragon's Den, we can pick up a couple of max elixirs that are very important for the end game, as well as the Dragon Fang right there if we need it. But really the max elixirs are the most important items down here because there aren't that many PP restoration items in Johto, and having those for the Elite Four will really help in some tough spots. Now we'll simply answer the questions of the sages, and Clair will have to give us our badge and our TM, and we're ready to move on to the Pokemon League. So with that done, of course, we're ready to make it over towards Kanto. Every Pokemon can come over here and get this rare candy that's sitting right here, though I'm not going to worry about that right now in this one. But now we just need to go ahead and use Waterfall to actually get up through this section. Now it's very important, every single Pokemon I'm going to save right here, because as soon as we walk out, this trainer is just a set spinner, and because we can't see her, there's no way to time her out, but she is not required. She's standing right there and will often catch you right as you step out of the cave, but you can skip her with enough resets. Because of that, she is not a required trainer, and I'm simply going to skip her right there. We can also pick up Sandstorm right here, and then we just have to get past that spinner again, and we're ready to move on to the league itself. As mentioned before, we can get access to the move Solar Beam right here. Obviously, it means nothing in this one, but for our grass types, or even Pokemon that just happen to learn Solar Beam, that could be a strategy later on. There is a free healing house right here. We can grab some berries just in case we need them on this section, but there's only one required trainer in this entire section. It's this girl right here who's blocking the entrance to Victory Road. She only has one Rapidash, which we can pretty easily take down here. Just a critical hit. Headbutt does the job. We'll pick up the Max Elixir, and now we're ready to go to rival number 5. Now in Victory Road, there's not really much to pick up, but some Pokemon will want to get TM26 right here for Earthquake. That could be one of the best moves as we go into the league. But with that, we have reached the final battle in this section. It's time for rival number 5. Now rival 5 leads off with Sneasel, so we simply go Flame Wheel here and get the easy one-hit KO with my legendary Arcanine. For Alligator's out next, I'm going for Headbutt. This appears to be a 3-hit KO as he goes for the Water Gun. We get the flinch the second turn, so that's an easy 3-hit KO. Now on the Golbat, I'm going to try to go Flame Wheel. Let's just see if that gets the KO. It does not. It's going to be a 2-hitter from here. We get confused and hit ourselves twice in confusion. Once we snap out though, we do knock that Pokemon out. Haunter's out next. I'm going to go Flame Wheel here. I expect it to go Curse, but that's fine. It will go down in a single turn. Headbutt on the Kadabra is an easy 1-hitter. Magneton, Flame Wheel, easy 1-hit KO. So just like that, we have made it through the rival, and we have made it to the Pokemon League with Arcanine. Is it going to be possible to actually beat the league with this Pokemon? Well, that's something that we're going to have to find out in the future. But for now, for every Pokemon that gets here, we're just going to buy some full restores, pick up any TMs that we might need for the league, get all the rare candies that are currently available. There are 7 available in the Johto section. And with that, we're ready to get into the league and try our first attempt at will. So I'm just going to save right here with this Arcanine, but we will pick that up when we get back to this section. I will, of course, go into more detail about all of the items and TMs that are available in this section when we get here for the Clair Minimum Battles series, but for now, this is how far we will go in the next section, and Arcanine is the first Pokemon that is officially moving on. But now with that entire section done, we have a preview of what will be upcoming, and we can see there are a few trainers there that could be hard depending on the Pokemon and their exact stats and movesets. I think some of these fire types are going to fall off hard when we get to Clair, and those Dragonairs have a lot of different moves, you know, Ice Beam and Thunderbolt, etc., so they could end up being walls to weaker Pokemon especially. But for now, we can see that a legendary Pokemon, at least in the form of Arcanine, can get through that section even with a slow level up group. So that gives some hope that some Pokemon will progress in this challenge. But for next time, we're going to be coming back to the Jasmine section, and it's time to look at a bunch of Pokemon that are just kind of a random smattering, many of which I do think we'll get through in the next episode, but we'll just have to see how they actually work out. We're going to be coming in first with Golbat. That means that Crobat is also getting in on the action. Venomoth, Dugtrio, Persian, Golduck, which means our member pick Psyduck will be in the next episode. Primeape, and Lantern. Since we've got Lantern, I will also run the member pick Chinchou, and because we're at the correct point in the Pokedex, we'll be getting that Vileplume in the next episode as well. So in total, there's going to be 11 Pokemon in the next episode. I think most of these challengers are pretty straightforward, but how we get through Jasmine with Golbat and Crobat has me pretty darn nervous. I think that we can definitely find a way through this section with Primeape, given that it's going to get a same type attack bonus and fighting type moves, which will just destroy Pryce and Jasmine. And Dugtrio should at least be able to get through Jasmine pretty easily, though we'll have to see if it can survive against Poliwrath and against Pryce's entire team. Lantern is the Pokemon I'm most worried about, because while yes, it will get Stab Surf, I'm not sure that that's going to be enough, just given how random this Pokemon has been so far. Maybe we have to go OPTMs with that one. Still, I think that it's reasonable to assume that everything except Golbat and Crobat probably gets through this next episode, but tell me what you think down below. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you so much to all of you who watch, and especially the channel members. If you'd like to support me in my goal of being a full-time PokeTuber, consider joining that channel membership and saving a Pokemon, because there are a lot more that are currently available. Something like Golem, for example, could be a pretty cool Pokemon to try in this section. Anyway, that does it for this one. I will see you in the next one. Later.